What happens when a powerful CEO dares a struggling single dad to play Chopin? And he actually does. What started as sarcasm became the most unexpected love story, filled with music, memory, and a little girl who changed everything. You won't believe what happens when hearts finally listen. Before we begin, tell us where in the world are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Vivienne Leclerc stood at the head of a long, glossy boardroom table, her black heels silent against the marble floor. CEO of one of the fastest-growing real estate firms in New York, she was known for her ambition, precision, and her impossible standards. Her team called her the ice violin, elegant but cold. That day, after a long pitch session, she'd leaned back in her chair, unimpressed, and stared down at the last applicant. A man clearly out of place. His suit was a decade old, his shoes scuffed, yet he held himself steady. "Tell me, Mr. Rivers," she said with a smirk, "if you can play Chopin, I'll marry you." The room chuckled, assuming it was a joke. But Noah Rivers didn't laugh. He looked at her, eyes calm, and simply nodded. "All right," he said. "Then I'll play." Vivienne froze. For the first time in years, she had no words, because she didn't know that the man standing before her, a single dad from Queens, had once played Chopin for someone he'd loved and lost. Noah Rivers worked as a part-time maintenance man and music tutor, raising his 7-year-old daughter Lily in a one-bedroom apartment in Jackson Heights. Life was simple but not easy. Every morning started with Lily's hair braids and breakfast toast. Every night ended with lullabies on a second-hand keyboard. He hadn't touched a grand piano in nearly a decade, not since Rebecca, Lily's mother, passed away unexpectedly. Once a scholarship pianist at Juilliard, Noah had left the world of recitals behind when grief made the keys too heavy. Now he gave lessons to neighborhood kids for $10 an hour, patched drywall to cover rent, and quietly prayed that one day something would shift. When he walked into Leclerc Holdings to apply for a building management position, he didn't expect to be mocked. Nor did he expect a challenge that would pull him face-first into the past he'd carefully buried. But something in Vivienne's smirk awakened an old ache and an old fire. After the meeting, Vivienne thought little of her comment. It had been sarcasm, a test, maybe even a power play. She didn't expect him to show up again. But the next afternoon, her assistant buzzed in with a strange request. "There's a man in the lobby with a piano." Vivienne blinked. "Excuse me?" "He says he's here to play Chopin." She stood up, confusion flickering into irritation, and made her way down to the atrium. And there he was, Noah, in his worn coat, standing beside a rented upright piano, his daughter perched quietly on a nearby bench. Without a word, he sat down. The lobby, full of polished stone and echo, fell silent. Then came the first notes, nocturne in E-flat major. Soft, poised, utterly devastating. Vivienne couldn't move. Neither could the dozen employees who had gathered. The music didn't just fill the room, it peeled it open. When he finished, there was no applause, just stunned stillness. Then Noah stood, nodded once, and left. Lily ran after him, holding his hand like it was her anchor. Vivienne stood frozen, heart beating louder than she'd admit. That night, Vivienne sat in her penthouse, the city glittering outside her floor-to-ceiling windows, but her thoughts wouldn't leave the lobby. That music, those eyes, something about it stirred a feeling she hadn't let in for years. She poured herself a glass of wine and wandered toward her piano, untouched since her father died. He'd been the only person who ever believed she could be more than cold calculation. As a child, she'd learned Chopin at his side. After his funeral, she stopped playing. Business became her music, numbers her rhythm. That's why the piece Noah chose pierced through her. It wasn't just a performance. It was a message, an answer, a story she didn't know she was part of. She searched him online. There was almost nothing. Just a few photos from Juilliard, old articles, and one recital clip that froze her heart. He had been brilliant. Then he'd vanished. The next morning, she made a call. Find me his contact. And reschedule everything this afternoon. For the first time in years, she felt uncertain. Noah didn't answer the first call. Or the second. He assumed it was a rejection, maybe worse. He regretted bringing Lily. He didn't regret playing. But the vulnerability felt raw. Then came the letter. Hand-delivered. On thick paper. From LeClaire Holdings. Lunch. Tomorrow. 1 p.m. Just bring yourself. Noah stared at it for a long time. He didn't own a proper suit. He didn't have childcare. Lily watched him, her head tilted. Is that the lady who liked your music? She asked. He nodded. Then you should go, she said simply. You played for her. Now she can talk. The next day they met at a quiet cafe. Vivian was already seated. Hands folded. Gaze steady. You surprised me, she said. No one does that anymore. Noah smiled softly. You dared me. She studied him. Why Chopin? Because it was the last piece I played for someone I loved. She said nothing. Just whispered. Me too. Something shifted then. Two guarded people, quietly realizing they weren't as alone as they thought. The lunch was quiet at first, formal, almost cold. Vivian asked questions with precision. Noah answered with honesty. They talked about music, loss, careers, and Lily. Vivian listened more than she spoke. Her usual sharp tone softened. Noah had no interest in impressing her. He wasn't selling anything. That disarmed her more than charm ever could. Halfway through, Lily leaned in and whispered, She looks like the fairy from your stories. Vivian laughed. A real, unguarded laugh. Noah blushed, but Vivian didn't mind. For the first time in a long while, she felt something unfamiliar. Warmth. That evening, Vivian opened an old drawer in her study. At the bottom lay a sealed envelope, yellowing at the edges, still unmailed. A letter she once wrote to her father after his death. It was about loneliness, pressure, and how success felt empty without someone to witness it. She never sent it. Never could. But tonight, after seeing a man play Chopin for his daughter, not for praise, not for fame, the letter stung. She held it in her hands and whispered, Maybe you were right. Maybe I am missing something. She didn't cry, but her silence felt heavier than tears. A week later, Vivian called again. This time, not for a job or a meeting, but a favor. Lily mentioned you teach piano. Would you consider tutoring me? Noah was surprised. You play. Used to, she said. I forgot how it feels. They began meeting once a week. Vivian learned scales again, awkward and frustrated at first. But Noah was patient. Lily sometimes sat nearby, offering advice with childlike confidence. Each note brought back memories for both. Of parents, promises, and people they no longer had. And somewhere between the sharps and flats, they began composing something neither expected, trust. Vivian's staff noticed the change. Her sharp edges had dulled. She smiled more, took longer pauses. She even brought Lily cupcakes one afternoon. Noah noticed it too in how she looked at people, not through them. One night, during a lesson, she paused mid-scale and asked, Do you think people can start over? Even after they've built walls too high? Noah didn't answer right away. Then he said quietly, You don't tear down walls all at once. You open a window first. She looked at him for a long time, then nodded. Thanks for the window. It was Lily's 8th birthday. She wanted a small party, cake, fairy lights, and her new friend, Miss Vivian. Noah hesitated, but Lily insisted. Vivian came, dressed in soft colors and carrying a wrapped gift. It was a music box. When opened, it played Chopin's Nocturne, just like the day in the lobby. Lily gasped. It sounds like Daddy. Vivian smiled, then knelt down. It's my favorite too. The party was simple but full of laughter. Vivian stayed longer than planned. As she helped wash dishes after, she looked at Noah and said, You know, That offer I made, it wasn't serious. He smirked. And yet, I played. Something unspoken passed between them. Something hopeful. Vivian had spent years mastering the art of control. Every meeting, every glance, every detail finely managed. But one rainy Thursday, as Noah arrived for their usual piano session, he found her standing alone by the window, holding a wine glass she hadn't touched. I didn't sleep last night, she admitted. I kept hearing that Chopin piece. He said nothing, just sat quietly by the piano. She slowly joined him, her fingers hesitant on the keys. Do you ever miss who you were before life changed you? She asked. Noah's hands paused. Every day, he replied. But I also love who I became because of it. That night, they didn't play scales. They played memories side by side. His chords softened her silence. Her laughter, though rare, warmed his defenses. In that moment, it wasn't about the music. It was about what they let themselves feel when the music played. Two people, scarred in different ways, beginning to meet each other in the spaces they tried so long to hide. Noah began noticing things. How Vivian would hum softly when focused. How she always arrived precisely 2 minutes early but lingered 20 minutes late. How Lily had stopped calling her Miss Vivian and started calling her Vivi. Their worlds were blending, not fast, but naturally. One afternoon, after a lesson, Lily drew a picture of the three of them holding hands under a tree labeled Us. Noah laughed awkwardly. Vivian, however, didn't correct her. She tucked the drawing into her bag and kissed Lily on the forehead. Felt easy. Felt dangerous. That night, Vivian looked at herself in the mirror and whispered, "You don't need to be alone just to prove you're strong." At the same time, Noah stared at his old recital poster hanging in the hallway. He used to think music was his life. Now he realized people were. And slowly, one in particular was becoming the song he never knew he needed to write. One Saturday morning, as Noah was cleaning his closet, a yellow envelope slipped from an old coat pocket. It was a letter from Rebecca, dated a week before she passed. He hadn't known it existed. With trembling hands, he opened it. Inside was a single page. Promise me you'll play again. Not for the world. For you. For Lily. Music is the only thing that ever healed you. He sat on the floor, tears running freely. It wasn't guilt he felt, it was permission. Permission to stop surviving and start living again. That afternoon, he canceled his tutoring sessions. He bought flowers, lilies. He dropped them by Rebecca's resting place and whispered, "I'm ready now." Then he did something he hadn't done in a decade. He called the local concert hall and asked for an application. Not for fame, not for glory, but for closure. And maybe for a new beginning. Noah invited Vivian to his small recital, a community fundraiser he agreed to perform at. He told her gently, "No pressure, just thought. Maybe you'd like to come." She said she would. But when the lights dimmed that evening, her seat remained empty. He waited, played anyway, every note, every breath, for Rebecca, for Lily, and somewhere deep down, for Vivian. After the applause faded, he sat backstage, pretending it didn't hurt. But it did. Meanwhile, Vivian sat in her office, surrounded by contracts, untouched food, and her phone in hand. She had tried to leave, twice, but fear, sharp and irrational, held her hostage. Fear that if she saw him on stage, she'd have to admit how much she cared. When she finally looked at the clock, it was too late. She whispered, "I'm sorry," to no one, and stayed alone in a room full of everything, except meaning. The next morning, Vivian stood at Noah's door. She looked tired, regret carved into every feature. "I should have been there," she said softly. Noah didn't answer right away. He stepped aside. Let her in. She glanced around, eyes settling on the drawing Lily had made, still pinned to the fridge. "I wasn't scared of you, Noah," she said, her voice cracking. "I was scared of how you made me feel." He walked over, hands in his pockets. It's okay to be afraid. I was too, for years. They stood in silence, the kind that holds truth. Then Lily, in pajamas, ran up and hugged Vivian's legs. You missed the music, she pouted. Vivian knelt down, kissed her head. I'll never miss it again. When she stood, Noah reached out, slowly, and took her hand. No conditions, no smirks, just warmth. And that was enough. 2 weeks later, Vivian hosted a private benefit gala, this time not for clients, but for young musicians. She invited Noah to perform. He hesitated, unsure he belonged in such luxury. But she insisted, saying, they need to see what resilience sounds like. That night, Noah stood under soft lights, tux borrowed, hands steady. Vivian stood in the wings, Lily on her hip. The hall hushed as Noah began. This time it wasn't Chopin. It was a piece he'd composed himself, raw, gentle, filled with longing and light. The audience didn't just listen, they felt. Every note was a chapter of his life. When the final chord faded, the silence that followed was louder than applause. Then came the standing ovation. But Noah only looked to the side, where Vivian met his gaze. Eyes full, chin trembling. That's the moment they both knew. Whatever this was between them, it was no longer uncertain. The next morning, they walked along the East River with coffee and Lily skipping ahead. Noah didn't plan to say anything, but sometimes the heart speaks on its own. What if I took the job? He asked. Vivian looked at him. At Leclerc. He nodded. Part-time, buildings, music therapy program. She tilted her head. Is this because of me? He smiled. It's because of us. A pause. Because I want to show Lily that real men don't walk away when things start to matter. Vivian's lips parted, but no words came. Only her hand reached out, slowly, lacing through his. He squeezed gently. You don't have to answer yet. She didn't, but the way her thumb traced his palm said enough for now. Days later, Vivian handed Noah a folder. It's a contract, she said. New music outreach director. Flexible hours. Health benefits. Piano access. He flipped through the pages, a little stunned. You created this? For you, she said. And for every kid who never gets a stage. He closed the folder. You really aren't who I thought you were. Vivian smirked. Just a little. Neither are you. They signed it together. No applause, no audience. Just pen on paper and a quiet smile between two people who had both rebuilt their lives from loss and were now building something else. Together. One afternoon, Lily climbed onto Vivian's lap and asked, When are you marrying Daddy? The room went still. Vivian looked at Noah, startled. He chuckled. That offer was a joke, remember? Vivian laughed, genuinely. You played Chopin, didn't you? She teased. Then softer. You played me awake. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was warm, hopeful. They weren't rushing. They didn't need to. What they had was already sacred, built not on vows, but on choices. Daily, deliberate choices to show up, to listen, to heal. If marriage came, it would be a celebration. But the love, that was already here. Living. Real. Months later, the community center unveiled its new music wing. Funded by Leclerc, led by Noah, painted with murals drawn by children. At the grand opening, Lily performed her first song, hands shaky but proud. Noah accompanied her. Vivian watched from the front row, eyes filled with quiet joy. After the applause, Lily whispered to the mic, My dad played Chopin once, and now we have this. The crowd laughed. Some wiped tears. That night, as the three walked home under soft city lights, Vivian took Noah's arm. Thank you, she said. He looked at her. For what? She smiled. For hearing the music no one else could. And just like that, the song that began as a dare ended as a promise. One played not on keys, but on hearts that finally found harmony. If the story moved you, Hit the like button and share it with someone who still believes in second chances. Subscribe for more emotional stories that hit where words alone can't. And tell us in the comments, what song brings someone back to your heart? We'd love to hear your story.